recording. And thank you for joining us, the ones of you who can, and for the ones who are not able to join us because of weather and issues that they're having. Maybe this will help them when they do get to see it. First of all, let's start with any of your questions or concerns that any of you have.
Dr. Todd, my only question was, when I posted task 1 to the discussion board, and I really wasn't certain that you were reading those, but I'd already posted it to the Dropbox after you made comments on it. So do I fix what you said and then resubmit it to the Dropbox? I mean, I'd already made Dr. Tillman's corrections and peer review corrections, but you gave a few suggestions also. So I just wanted to make sure I could go ahead and resubmit it to the Dropbox because I got those after I'd already submitted it.
And yes, that will be fine. And it's my fault because I was gone for a week and a half.
It's no problem. I just wanted to make sure that's okay if I did that.
It is okay. And if you need to, if it will not allow you, because I'm not sure exactly how it was set up, how many times you could submit, then make the changes and then submit it when you do put your whole paper together.
Okay.
Okay. So if it will not allow you to do that, to resubmit it a second time,
just keep it with the way I, and for the end one.
Right. That's
okay.
Right. Yes. All right. Any other questions?
I just didn't want you to think I ignored you completely and just didn't do it.
And I appreciate you letting me know that, because in years past, when I was very prompt and got them to them, and I told them exactly what to be done, when they came back in for the final one, none of the changes I told them to make had ever been made. So that, you know, that's one of the things that discourages those of us who are teaching, is when we know we've told you things that will make it go real smooth, and then you ignore what we tell you. So
absolutely. Well, as a teacher, I realized that. So I fixed it. I just wasn't sure what to do with it after that. Okay.
Yes.
What I did with mine, like after I revised, is after like somebody like did the peer review, or some, you know, like one of the professors did it, then I would go to reply, and then I attached the updated one there.
Right, but this is in the Dropbox.
Oh, okay. I haven't done. Oh, are we supposed to have something in the Dropbox?
Okay, I'll go over that in just a minute.
Okay. Okay.
Screen, because I think there's a lot of confusion about the whole process. So I'll do that in just a minute.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Because I want us to get all this stuff cleared up as quickly as we can early in the semester.
Is our PLC required to be recorded for task 2?
All right. You can do task 1 and 2 together in one Zoom conference. And remember, I've got this somewhere else, but you only have 5 Zoom conferences that you have to do this entire semester. You do the first one where you're setting up who's going to run them and who's going to be the Zoom master and the dates and all that. Then you do task 1 and 2 where you're discussing them as a group, and those can be done together, and that's of the APSL. Then you have task 1 of the APTEL, and then there's 2 case studies, and those case studies are later on in the semester. So task 1 and 2 do need to be discussed, but they can be done together.
Okay, are you talking about the peer review Zoom sessions?
Yes, that's
okay. I'm sorry. Let me. I think you misunderstood me. What I'm asking is for task 2, when I meet with my PLC group tomorrow, does that session have to be recorded and uploaded, or can I provide pictures and the presentation and the narrative?
You can provide some pictures, and I think, is that the one, I believe it calls for some evidence of technology or some evidence that you've done it. So you don't have to record the whole thing. You can record a little piece of it. you can do pictures, you can do, you've just got to provide that evidence. And that's one of the things that I will, when I'm reading yours for task 2, and I actually have gotten the ones of task 2 for section 4 that were turned in earlier, I've gotten those finished. And then I'm working on the ones for section 8, which is the other class that I teach. So hopefully we'll get some of those things answered, but it does say in the rubric, it does say that you have to have evidence that you conducted this collaborative PLC meeting. So somehow you've got to have that evidence.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Who else has a question?
I have a question. Are we asking just only about task 2 right now, or are we also asking about questions about task 3?
I'm not into 3 yet. Let's do that later. A little bit later. This is anything that we've done so far that we have completed, that Dr. Tillman and I have provided information back to you or working on that you're trying to get ready.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? And keep your question, because I'll talk about task 3 later. Okay.
Since we are just beginning and we are uploading and we're trying to figure out like exactly where things go, will you let us know like if we didn't upload in a certain place? Like just in the beginning of the course, just because I uploaded my peer reviews to my peers, but then I found today like where I actually upload them, where they're actually supposed to go.
And that's one of the things I want to show. And I'm going to see if I can find the share the screen. Let's see if that says share the screen. If this is the right one, I'm going to try this and hope it works. I'm going to try the share the screen and go over that piece right now. Okay. Optimize, share. Discussion board, share. All right, now can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, if you'll look down here on the side, the first one, it says APSL tasks for review. And this is what I have up here. So you see when it says for peer and instructor review, that's where you post your draft, okay? And then the next one, it is for task 2, and it goes all the way down. Now there's another place that says APTEL task for review, but they're also listed here. Now if you will notice, I put this one in so that you would have a place that you would actually know where you're setting up your Zoom schedule. And this is attached to, I think it's week 3, maybe week 4. But I try to put everything at the bottom of the page for the week that you're working on. So this is the one where you do your first. It's your draft. Now, when you come in and you've completed your peer reviews, this is where you go. It's the one directly underneath, and there's one for the APSL and one for the APTEL. The difference is this has 2 places, so it's task 1 peer review and task 1 peer review. Now, one of the things that you can do to make sure your peers get it, because they won't be able to see this is in my Dropbox, and it's where it's attached to where you'll get points for it. So you just do one. So this would be the one you did, and this would be the second person's that you did. And then it goes on down and shows task 2, task 3, and task 4. And then I posted this again. It shows up as the Zoom conference for task 1 and 2 of the APSL. So I made a different place for it so that you'd have a clear place to put it. So that is under the APSL completed peer reviewed. Now, the third place that you posted, which will be the third time you're dealing with it, is where you're just posting your task 1 after you've made all of your corrections. Now, this one is the one that may not match exactly with what the deadlines and due dates are. because with this hurricane that's come through and with all of the...
Go ahead and read it out.
Okay, with this hurricane that has come through, it is going to cause a lot of issues for a lot of people in trying to meet the initial deadlines. So when you've got all of your peer reviews and when you've got your information from Dr. Tillman and my information, and then you make your changes, that's where you put this and you think, okay, task 1 is done. I'm putting that to bed until I put the whole thing together. So those are the 3 places, and you can find all of these on this side over here. Now, one of the things that I also do, and I try to make sure, this is week 4. So if you'll note, what I've done is I've went in and I've left what Dr. Lamb has as the original, what's due every week. Then I did the short, brief, this is what you need to be working on this week. Then this is one of the things that's listed. It says Dr. Hamilton's video on EBOS. Well, it's on the side over here, but I also felt like it would be easier for you because it's way down here at the bottom under value added assessment on one of yours, and another one it may be a little bit in a different place. So I went ahead and copied for you, so all you have to do is go to here to watch it. And then I also put my invitations and my conference agendas there. So I do that each week, trying to be of help to you. Now, if we'll look back at week 3, that'll also show you what I'm talking about when I say that I put on discussion board. You can go to that week and it will take you to the link where you upload your information about who's going to be the Zoom master and all of those kinds of things. So did that answer your question about where to put it? Did that ever answer everybody's questions?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Where do you put your comments though? Because I haven't seen your comments.
Okay. All right. Let me go to one that I haven't graded yet. And I apologize because this is going to show one of your all's papers that I have not gotten to yet. So I'm not going to do anything except this is my screen whenever it comes for me to grade. Yours looks different, but I usually do all of them at one time. And over here, if you will notice on the screen, it has a place where I give you the points, and it also has a place for feedback to learner. That's where I make my comments.
It actually shows up in what looks like a little cartoon bubble to us.
Okay, okay. But that's where I make the comments. And so I will say something. I mean, if yours is really, really good, I may say, this looks really good. And I may not have any suggestions because you've got all of the information you've done. You've got it in the right order. But if I see something that I think is not going to be beneficial for you, or that will make it quicker for the person who is actually going to be doing your evaluation, then I will do that. One of the things I want you to understand that I am looking at is when it gets to the evaluator, they're going to have everybody's coming in at one time because it's the way this whole program is structured. You have Dr. Tillman and I, and we're the teachers, and we're working with you to make sure it gets to the point it needs to be submitted. When it's submitted, it is submitted to someone who is not ever read any of your pieces or who has not ever read any of your tasks. And they're looking at it for the first time, and they're going to be looking at it based on the rubric. And they're going to be following that rubric from one thing to the next. And so I think in one of the people's that I sent comments back to, I said, this is not the time for creativity. Don't show your creativity here. Make it very simple for your evaluator to find everything. There will be times in some of the prompts where you can show your creativity. And you can come up with subheadings, but when, like for task 1, that is one that is so, it is so designed, it's got to be the research, and then it's the selection, and then it's the meeting. You know, we don't need any creative titles. We just need to have it follow that so that they can look at it, they can look at the rubric, they can see, okay, everything is there, so I am now ready to go. So that's why I make some of the comments that I do. Now I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and I think we're all back to where we can see each other. And again, if you're having trouble and you're not showing up on the screen, go down on mine, it's at the bottom. Go down to the bottom and it says video, and there's a little slash line across it. If you're not showing up on your face, click.
I'm just going to turn mine off while I eat.
That's all right. That's okay. But it is good for us to see you, so we know that if you got a question, we can see you. Yes, Kelly.
Okay, so if I did get 100 out of 100 on that task, but if you don't get 100 out of 100, are we able to resubmit that?
No, and I'll tell you why, because you're going to be submitting it so many times. And
Okay.
the thing that I don't take off a lot of points, and you're going to have an A as long as you do the work you're supposed to do,
Okay.
even if I take off some points. Now, usually if there's a whole section missed, I'll take off 10 points.
Okay.
There's
And then, so, you know, like you commented on mine and I changed. Both of my peers commented, I changed. Dr. Tillman, I changed. And then I went back and I wanted to add a few more things. Do I need to resubmit?
No, that is
No.
fine. That's part of your revision. You know,
Okay.
we're looking to make sure you got everything that you have to have.
Okay.
Now, you can add more to make your paper better.
Right.
And one thing I would encourage all of you to do is proofread when you haven't been working on it. Because one of the things, and I have even looked at things that I've sent to you and I thought, okay, I read that 2 times, and then I find 2 or 3 errors in it.
Right.
So it is so hard to catch all the errors at one time. So take a little bit of time away from it before, and then right before you submit the whole paper together, after you've done all 5 of the tasks and put it together, then proof it real carefully. And if you're really unsure, get an English major who is really familiar with how to write research papers to proof it for you too. All right, any other questions?
I have one more.
Yes,
Sorry.
Victoria or who?
I know a couple people have had this question. Once we do the Zoom conferences, what do we do with the link, the YouTube link, once it's been uploaded? Where does that go?
Okay. Are you talking about where to post it?
Yes.
All right. That's what I was mentioning. Let me go back to the share the screen. Okay.
I'm sorry. On the form, like that peer review form where it says link at the top, is it, I guess what I'm asking is, do we link it to that page before?
You don't have to.
Okay.
Now you have to realize that we've learned a lot as we've done this, and a lot of that was started at the very first.
Okay.
And so in some of the classes, they require a peer review after each task. We're not requiring that because you all are add-on and you are simply moving too fast, and you just don't have the time to do that. So that's the reason that you may hear some of the regular 601s say, okay, I've got to do a peer review this week on task 1 and this week on task 2 and this week on task 3. Don't try to compare to what any other class is doing. Now, Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stedman and Dr. Tillman and I are all doing the exact same things, and we're the ones that have all of the 601s that are add-on licensure. So we should all be doing about the same thing, and I think we are.
Okay.
But don't get confused with the others. So that form was developed for use and only submission at one time after a while, you know, after everything was done. So I'm not going to require that. You turn in your peer reviews when you get them done, and I want where you've done your 2. I'm not looking for what other people have done for you, because it should work out that if you've done 2, everybody has 2. So that's the reason I just want to see your 2 that you did, so I can see your work. That's what I'm looking for. And so then just put the link on where I put you a place to do it. And it will be a place that I've added. That will be something that's different from Dr. Stedman and Dr. Lamb, because I'm trying to make your life a little bit easier by creating that. So you'll actually have more points than the students in the other classes, because I'm adding those points, because I'm sticking those in, rather than make you continue to resubmit to something. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, I submitted my peer reviews to the Dropbox last night, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to attach that link. So
that's fine. Just attach it where I give you a place to attach it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's see.
One more.
Had a question over here. All right, Kelly.
Okay, sorry, one more question. So when we are doing like the reference page, I've seen different things like online, and I've heard things from different people. Is everything double spaced? So even the references are double spaced?
All right, I bought this book because I can't always find everything that I want. And at the time, I still think it's the most recent one. It's the APA Publication Manual, and it was the 6th edition. So I always just go to this whenever I have a question, and they have an example.
Okay.
They have an example, and if you happen to have this same edition, it is around page 59. And yes, they do have everything double spaced, even on the reference page. I don't know whether I can get it where you can see it or not.
I can see it.
But anyway, you're right. There's different things. So I always go back. They told us to use APA. When they told us to use APA, I already had the 5th, but then they had the new edition. So I went and bought a 6th edition.
Okay, thank you very much.
So just always go back to what APA says.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
There's a question in the chat box, because I guess I don't know how to say her name, Latia, maybe.
Right.
Her internet's running slow, and she has a question, so can I just ask it for her?
Yes.
Okay. They're having trouble in their group getting up with some of the other people in their group. So they've sent emails, and they've been trying to get up with the other, I guess there's 2 more, and they're not getting any answers. So she's not sure what to do about that.
Okay. Now, I need to go back and look at the groups, because there have been some people who have dropped out. And let me see if I can find hers. It may be, all right, it may be, it looks like she still has 4 in her group. So
does she just need to contact you by email if the others aren't responding to her?
Yes, that would be fine. And I did get an email that someone only was able to have half of the group, but that they had contacted by email and sent information. So it's really hard when you're trying to deal with everybody's schedules, and especially with the weather that we've been having recently. So just get in touch with me and or Dr. Tillman if there are issues and someone is not participating. But I do know that some people have dropped out, and so it may be that we only have 3 in a group, but that is still okay. You can still get 2 people to review the task. So just let me know. That's a good point. All right. Any other questions? Dr.
Dr. Todd, I think the APA question is muddied because I was saying what you said, and then I look in the reference that they're given in the handbook, and it shows that the references are single spaced, and they do show the hanging, indent, but it is single spaced in their in the manual. And so I think that when that was done, I think it must have been done before the 6th edition came out.
Okay.
So I'm accepting either one.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. If you have turned it in and it meets APA, then we'll go with it. We're not going to make you redo it. So if the guide says one thing and the APA manual says something, we're going to accept both of them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good question. And thank you, Dr. Tillman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
My district was affected by the hurricane.
Yes, ma'am.
And we are out through the end of the week and potentially could be out longer. The school that I'm working with is their classrooms and offices are about 3 or 4 feet underwater. And I've been trying to electronically email, but there has been no email traffic because we've had several people that are landlocked by water, roads that are completely washed away. So I'm not sure when we're actually going to be back in school. I noticed in the notes that, to extend the deadline by a week, but if we're not in school next week.
That was Dr. Lamb's suggestion to extend it by a week, but we're going to work with you until you're back and you can have your group together. So, I mean, we want you to finish. We want you to be successful. And so we understand that it may be a while before some of you are going to be able to be back in school. So just do whatever you can with whatever resources you have. And then when you can get back and can do some of the others, it may be you start several different pieces and then you go back and finish them. But
because I'm looking at task 2. I still submitted even though we have not had the meeting. But like task 3 is banking upon our results from task 2.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And see, that's one of the things that the APSL does. Each one of them builds on what you did in the previous one. So it makes it really hard for you to get too far down the road without completing the task. And certainly when it was designed, no one had any idea that the weather would do what it's done. So it was not expecting a hurricane. So just do the best you can and reach out to Dr. Tillman and I, and we will work with you any way that we can. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Could I interrupt one time? If any of you talk to anyone that says they're going to drop out because they just can't finish, tell them to stick a sock in it and get to work. We're going to help them and get through this. I talked to a lady today, and as I said, she's in a tent and has no intersection with anybody in the outside world except her cell phone. Her husband is a firefighter, and he takes her phone and charges it on the generator back at the firehouse. So, just encourage people. Hang in there. It's going to be okay.
And tell them to reach out to us if they're feeling really, really anxious about something. I have never been one to ever be a got you professor or a got you principal or a got you teacher. I just want you to be successful. And if there's any way that we can help you do that, we're going to do that. We will extend deadlines and we will do whatever we need to do to help you. That's our purpose. We look at it as we're here to help you, and we're hopefully taking a little bit of stress off of you. Dr. Lamb and the university is thinking things are going to be back quicker than they are for some of you. Some of you are in a situation, it's going to be a while. So we will work with you and just do the reading that you can do so that when you get back to school, you will have the knowledge base. And if you need to do research on strategies for the next section that you're working on, which will be on strategies, do whatever that you can do to get ahead, to be prepared for when you do your meetings. Another thing is if you can't meet with your people in person, I think due to the extreme circumstances, if you could do a Zoom session with your school group, if they would download the free version, The free version of Zoom will allow you to talk for 30 minutes, and then it will cut you off, because initially they had us using that one, and then they realized that that wasn't enough time. So I think in these kind of circumstances we're dealing with, we have to look at unusual ways of doing what we need to do. So I know that's not a first preference, but it might be whenever somebody gets internet back and they have telephone, that you could do some kind of something like that together. So that's another option if you're out for a long time.
Well, and it's technology based, so that's what we're asking. Hey, Zoom.
That's right.
I have one more question in regards to that. Could we have like a mishmash, like say, because if I'm able to go into work, and say a couple of people in my group are there, can we do a group that way and then technology with the other members?
Yes, you can do that. I mean, you can do whatever kind of situation you can come up with to get the best answers in the situation you're dealing with. So yes, we'll work with you on that.
I told a couple of people that this is one of the rare times when they can look at that creativity competency, and they are coming up with all kinds of creativity examples, and they better plug them in, because we hope they never get the chance like this again.
That's right. Okay, any other questions? All right, now one thing on your agenda, I tried to put as much information there as possible so that you'd have it after we did this too, and so that the people who are not able to join us would actually have some information to look at. If you'll look down on the third section, it says after you have made your revisions by us, post it to the APSL assignment Dropbox. And this is just a note that you will use Turnitin only one time for each of the artifacts, and that's when you put the whole thing together, not each individual section. And you will do that in Dr. Tillman's class shell rather than in mine. What they have told us is if you use it too frequently, it's actually going to give the wrong score the last time that you do it. So you want it done at the very end when it's all finished. And there will be some scores where it will show that you all have the same thing, especially if you leave the information in about each one of the prompts and the task and all that. So it's not going to be real low sometimes, but there will be some overlap. There will be some things that all of you will have. If you happen to be in the same school, some of your data may be the same. So just make sure you don't overuse the Turnitin, because we want to make sure that the final one is what is looked at. All right, anything else that you have questions on? All right, I told you to wait, if you could, till we got to the APSL task 3. And this whole task is about best practices. So what I did, if you'll look at your second page of your agenda, what I did was go through and basically, I'm sure Dr. Tillman's already went over some of the same stuff with you, but just to bullet it so that you see what you've got to have, maybe just a little different format. Sometimes that's what I try to do, is put it in a different format to make sure you see everything that has to be done. So the first thing you've got to do is create a literature review and an annotated bibliography that features description of several best practices and why you consider those best practices and what do those best practices go back to. What did those best practices in task 3 go back to?
The most pressing need.
The most pressing need that you identified in task 2.
And then like how we're going to address those.
And that, yes. So you're
Right.
looking for things, let's say you chose literacy. When you looked at your data, did your data tell you that it was the students can't comprehend, they don't have the vocabulary, they can't pronounce it because they don't have the phonetics. You know, what did your data tell you if you're working with younger children? What's that data tell you is really missing? A lot of times it's going to be comprehension. Just like I can tell you that probably for 10 to 12 years, measurement has been the part of math that almost always gives schools problems. So, you know, you think that this is new stuff. We've been dealing with the same issues for 10 to 12 to 15 years. So, you know, it looks like we could find an answer somewhere on how to fix these issues. And that's really what you're looking for, is this answer that's going to help in your school improve whatever is the basis for the problem that you've identified. Now, I was looking at some of the task 2s today, and one of the things that I noticed was that you're looking at subgroups, and that is exactly what you're supposed to do if that information is there. And sadly, it's the same subgroups many times, the same ones over and over again. I did notice in one that it was a little bit different from what you normally would see. A lot of times it's boys. Boys do not like to sit still. And I had 2 boys of my own. They're now grown adults. So I've been interested in how boys learn from the time that, I guess, for 35 years and trying to figure out how boys learn and how they learn differently from girls and what we can do to help. I think one of the biggest things is they learn actively and girls will sit still. And that's one of the biggest difference in lower grades. But I noticed in a lot of the data is the boys, is the economically disadvantaged, and it's the EC children. That's pretty much been the case for ever since we started testing. That's the subgroups that we've been working with. So we obviously have got to figure out how to do a better job with these kids in order to help them get where they need to be, so when they get to high school, they'll be ready for everything. And then you are to present and discuss the findings of your research in your PLC, and that's where you talk about and determine what you feel is going to work with your school, because you're going to find a lot of research about different strategies that may or may not work. And you have to think about your school and talk about it. That's what you're talking about when you do your collaborative meeting. You know, will this work here? Do we have enough background in what it's asking us to do that we can actually do that? I'll go back. I was a principal at a if somebody will mute theirs, so I'm hearing some talking. Anyway, one of the things that we were looking at when I was a principal was teaching boys. What's the best way to teach them? And we actually had bought some books that said, you know, these are strategies you can use with boys. There's another thing that was real popular when I was a principal, that was how to do cooperative learning. Well, that's still something that people are recommending. So, you know, are you set up to do cooperative learning in the way that the people who researched the practice are saying you're supposed to do? Too many times we take an idea, we think we know what it's saying to do, and we do it our own way, and we don't get the results that we need because we're not doing it the way the research says to do it. So just keep those things in mind as you're looking at this. And then it does say you're to use some form of technology that you are not currently using with this targeted group. So think about that as strategies when you're looking for strategies.
Okay, here, that's where my question is. Do you want me to ask it now, or do you want me to wait?
Yes, ask it now.
So I'm not looking at I'm not looking at a subgroup of students. What I'm looking at is a standard that we're showing weakness in across the board.
Right.
Okay? So when I look at this, I mean, there are all kinds of different teaching strategies and that sort of thing to help with this, but and I'm sure there is technology, but so much of it you have to purchase. And we have already purchased an enormous amount of technology at my school. I know my principal's not going to purchase anything else. So I'm limited to finding something that would be free.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to figure out how that's going to work as far as, I mean, I understand that something in it has to be technology, but one thing I read said that all of your suggestions needed to have to be technology based. So
I don't think
know
the
what to do
rubric
about
says that. I don't believe the rubric says that everything has to be technology based.
The rubric doesn't, but I think there is some place that does say that. But one of the questions that I want to make sure you address, because I wasn't quite sure if it was the same as in the past, is the number of the minimum requirement number in the annotated bibliography.
And it doesn't say, does it?
Well, it didn't say, but it used to say 5
Yes,
plus
it did.
3.
Yes, it did. Used to say at least 5.
So I said 5 plus 3. But if you want it to be 5 including 3, I just, whatever you agree, that's what I want.
I'm good with what you said, because I think, but it does not all have to be technology oriented. I think some.
5 plus 3 technology. Yes. Okay, that's what I told them.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Lori?
yes, but the one that we implement needs to be technology based.
Well, no, one of the, you're probably, if you're going to improve your school, you're going to do more than one implementation of a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You may be doing a technology piece, and then you may be doing some practice that your teachers use for whatever your standard is. So it's not limited to just one thing. It's what you as a group think is going to be the most effective on that standard in your school or across schools or whatever group you're using.
Okay, so is it possible then to, and obviously the PLC would help determine this, but is it possible to give 2 to 3 options of how to improve and ask the teachers to implement 1 or 2 out of the 3 or something like that?
I think it would be possible, as long as you kept good records of what they were implementing. And it's also possible that they would want to do more than one. Because
absolutely. We adopted a brand new math curriculum this year, and so our math teachers are drowning in newness. So I'm a little afraid about their reaction when I say, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. I mean, they're going to have a meltdown on me if I give them much more.
All right, you have a new math curriculum. Does it give you links to programs or?
It is 100% online, and there are applets that go with it and that sort of thing. But since we had already implemented it, it's not anything that they're not already using because they are using it.
All right. Have you seen anything in there? A lot of times in new programs, since I don't know what your program is, they will have suggested activities using something else that's new. And they will usually be free or something the company provides. So,
no, this is linked to other programs, but it's within the curriculum because it's 100% digital. They don't have books, and so everything is linked through that curriculum. So I didn't think I could include that since we're already doing that. Even though this is the first year we're doing it, but it's something we're already doing. It's not going to be new.
I don't know what you think, Barbara, but it seems to me that if they're just implementing it this year, it is new, and all the pieces are not going to be implemented now. You're just trying to get the bare bones out there so that they're familiar with it, and then they'll be adding components, I would think, because you can't.
So maybe just encouraging them to use the technology part of the lessons for those specific lessons or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would work because you're right. You do not want to stress your teachers out. Otherwise, they're not going to do anything different except what they have to do. I understand that. You do not want to overwhelm them. So when it is a totally new program, look for something in there that they don't have to do that you think would help with the learning for the children, and encourage them to use that. But
Okay.
you're looking for a strategy that's going to help the children that you've targeted.
Right.
You know, because even if you're doing a standard, there's a group that's going to get the standard and there's a group that's not going to get the standard. What can you do to get more people?
Oh, okay.
With
So
the
perhaps I might be looking for something for reteaching
Yes.
also.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That helps. Thank you very much.
All right. Anybody else? And hopefully that discussion helped you and you're thinking about your own school too, because sometimes I think examples help. All right. Yes, ma'am.
So when we say 5 sources plus 3 online related sources,
Yes.
so we're going to find 5 sources plus 3 online that could be possibilities.
Yes.
And then the team will choose a few, and then what our school can afford and things like that, that we can actually implement.
There was actually a class that I taught a few years ago, and it was for the curriculum and instruction students. And they only looked at free materials, free online materials. Those are things I would encourage you to look at, because most of the time the school's resources are getting more and more limited. So if you don't use the free stuff, you probably won't be able to implement it.
And that's what Dr. Tillman told us on Sunday, like if we can all come back and share at least a few free resources, then maybe we could build off of that. So I think that will really help everybody.
Right. Okay, any other questions? All right, the next piece that's really important is don't forget your graphic organizers. Your evaluators are going to look for those graphic organizers. And what they're going to show is the relationship between the need and the best practices that you're going to try to work on in task 4. And task 4 is your action plan, which will be coming up shortly. There are 2 prompts for task 3. Prompt 1 is the annotated bibliography, and that's where you feature in your narrative that you will provide evidence and illustrate resources for best practices in whatever your identified need is. And it should include a section with online tools, and that's where Dr. Tillman said 5 that are not online and 3 online. And that is fine. You can always have more, but you don't need less, because that gives your group something to look for, to look at. And you've done the research, but they may not be in agreement with all of the things, and they may have tried them. I actually had the superintendent who followed me. I saw him at a meeting after I was working for Appalachian for a year or so. And he said, "You are one very hard person to follow." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Every time I mention this would be a good idea to try, they say, well, we've already done that. Dr. Todd had us do that." Well, I looked at him and I said, we didn't have money. So we took ideas wherever we got them, and we tried them. And we tried them in whatever school needed them. And I said, they're telling you the truth. I said, we worked ourselves to death a lot of times. So, I know what it's like to not have resources. I worked in a system that was very poor in one sense of the word. We had parents who wanted a lot of good for their children, but we also had poverty. So I know what it's like, and you just do whatever you can with whatever free resource you can come upon. And then prompt 2 is, that's where you're going to put your information about how the PLC created and used the graphic organizers and the visuals and all of that has to be in there. Now this is where I put, since there are not specific titles for these 2 prompts, use your creativity. This is where you can shine with your creativity for your subheadings. So there's places for creativity and there's places for not having that. And then I went ahead and listed what your proficient requirements were. you have to have the annotated bibliography online tool showing knowledge of best instructional practices that matches your need, and you have to utilize your data to specify the needs and provides evidence that research-based strategies will be used to address the needs. And it has to have a narrative that features references to sources found in the research and includes multiple graphic organizers. And then this is one that is really hard to know what it's going to take to get to be at the accomplished level, because it pretty much just says, and it must exceed expectations for being proficient. So that is just so open-ended that at one point in time, I worked with the evaluators, and we decided what that was. And that was that you would have more than 5 and more than 3. And we actually broke it out. But that's not there now. And so that's just the open-ended, and it is one of those things that we don't exactly know what to tell you, but it's got to be more than what you think proficient is. So we're going to say good luck.
Well, one of the things that I told them, and again, it's from the past, is that the annotated bibliography with 150 or so words, 2 paragraphs, 1 summary, 1 evaluative, was an attachment to go into the appendix, and then the literature review actually was what was in the paper, which was fleshing out the annotated bibliography into a literature review, so that they wouldn't think that the annotated bibliography was in fact a literature review, because we've got a few people here that should be doctoral students before long, and we don't want to send them on thinking their dissertation is going to be an annotated bibliography.
That's right. The literature review is there's quite a few things that you have to do to have a good literature review. And again, that was one of the courses I taught for CNI, in that they had to come up with a literature review. And they started out with annotated bibliography. That was their first step. But then they had to put it in a good literature review and follow all of those steps.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't overpowering them with assignments, because I think that's really what the assignment is.
So the literature review, it goes in with your narrative, and you would talk about
the narrative.
Okay, so but do you talk about the discussion you had with your PLC about each one and that sort of thing, or are you just giving a review of the tool or the source?
Dr. Todd will have to be the final authority here, but
all right, I'm looking at the proficient thing, and I think this is something we need to be very careful about. Literature review is not mentioned in the proficient column anymore. And that's what throws me, because I really think that a literature review is more important than what is here. But it says annotated bibliography and online tools. And then it goes on, and then it says you've utilized your data to specify needs and provides evidence that research-based strategies are going to be used. And this is the only place it mentions the narrative. This is the narrative features references to sources from the research and multiple graphic organizers. So I think that could be where you're looking at the literature review, but it really no longer uses the term literature review. So I guess that would be the way to get to accomplished, is you actually do the literature review, and then if you were at the proficient level, you've got the annotated bibliography and you've used the data, and then your narrative talks about how you came up with all of that. So I think it was better when it did say literature review. It was stronger, and that we knew what to do with it. But it's not mentioned anymore. They've changed that.
And one more question. Do you mind to talk a little bit about these graphic organizers? I'm not real clear on what we're supposed to be doing with those.
All right, the graphic organizers, the way it says the graphic organizers are to illustrate and help detail the PLC's projected impact on the identified need. Well, when I think of a graphic organizer, I think of something that the teachers can use that's going to help the students understand what they're doing, particularly if it's in the literature or language arts. Now, this does not necessarily say that that's what they're looking for, but the graphic organizer is going to help detail your PLC. So the graphic organizer would be something that you would use, I think, and Dr. Tillman helped me here. I think the graphic organizer would be something that you would use with your PLC to help them understand what you're trying to do. Does that sound right?
Yes, I tend to think that it's sort of the precursor to the growth plan that they're going to be developing. And so I sort of see it in a charted form, possibly, where they're seeing how here's the need and here are the things that we're thinking about and resources and, you know, can we do it? And then when you get to 4, you're going to have to really flesh it out and have it, you know, every piece of that school improvement plan is going to suddenly have to appear in section 4.
Another thing is, you know, a lot of times they would talk about bubble maps, and you'd have your central idea in the middle, and then you would have each idea out from that. And I think that, you know, whatever you choose, you've got to tie it all together. These graphic organizers are going to be how you're going to tie the information together that you need to put together in your final piece that we're doing pieces all along.
So since I'm doing pieces of standards, then it could be if the issue is this standard, here are some options. If the issue is this part of the standard, then here are some options, that kind of thing.
Yes, and if you're using different grade levels, if some of you are working with multiple grade levels, you might have a 3rd grade graphic organizer where you might be looking at what you might do, and you might have a different one for 4th grade, or maybe it's biology, or maybe it's math.
Okay, all right, thank you, that helps.
But this is also where you can use some creativity. And when it says graphic organizer, you know, use whatever you feel comfortable using that you have used with your students, or you've used in undergraduate school or in your master's program. You know, we're not asking you to start from the beginning and redo everything. We're just asking you to use what you're familiar with that's going to get this information across.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help? All right, any other questions about that?
I would say, go ahead.
I just, I've been in this habit with 1 and 2 of doing too much. That should go in a later task, so I want to make sure I don't do that. Task 3. Task 3. Basically, all I'm doing is collecting my sources, my online tools, and preparing them for presentation to my group. Am I understanding that right?
This is the research piece based on your need, where you're going to use the information then to put in your school improvement plan for 4.
Okay. So am I actually presenting it to my group yet and discussing that?
No.
Well, it says utilize data to specify need.
Well, they have to select.
You have to help detail the PLC's projected impact.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this might be a piece where you talk with them about it, but it does not actually come right out and say you have to present all this information to them at this point in time. Is that the way you read it too, Dr. Tillman?
Well, I think it's up to that point, and it's just a little, for me, I'd like to see if it's going to show the impact, then they have got to have thought about that this is definitely going to be something that'll work, or this will not be impactful for my students because of some reason. So just by that, they're sort of winnowing it down to say the group feels comfortable with these strategies for these particular situations.
Okay.
So you may want to get their fact, you may not be able to get the information from the full group, especially with the way the weather is right now. But you might want to get some information from some of them.
Right.
So
I don't
what we're
think
doing is
that'll be a problem.
we have five, we have 5 sources and then the 3 tools, but we're not going to implement all 8 of those. It'll be up to our PLC as to which one we go forward with.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. I heard another question somewhere else.
I was just saying, I don't think it'll be an issue to get them together. I just want to make sure I don't go too far into something that's actually going to be task 4. So I'm researching the sources and the online tools, presenting them to the group, and we as a group will choose the ones that we think will have the most impact, and that's my stopping point, right?
Right.
Okay.
All right, now remember, task 4 is an action plan. So you've got to have all of your information from 1, 2, and 3 ready to put it together with task 4. And task 4 is where you really get into talking about why this action plan is important and how does it align with learning objectives and all of that kind of thing. So yes, you stop before you start that piece, the action plan.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Rochelle.
I wanted to know if the graphic organizers, are they to be included in task 3, or those are just something that I use when I have the meeting?
You have to include them.
Okay, okay.
Now, you can either use some of them in your narrative, and I think you probably want to use at least one. And then you can use others in your presentation. And I'm glad you said that. One of the things that I said on some of the people's, when I was looking at them, when you do a PowerPoint, that can be submitted as evidence in that it can be attached as an appendix. But in your narrative, you don't have to refer to each one of the slides. You can just talk in your narrative about what's in your PowerPoint and go piece by piece and continue on down. Put your charts in there that you think is important. And one other thing I need to really remember and tell you is make sure we can open it. If it's a Google Doc, we can't open it. Sometimes if it's something in your school servers, we can't open it. We do not want to frustrate your evaluators by them not being able to open it and then have to send it back to you. So that's why, the links you send, you may not think that I look at them at all, but I do. I try to open every link that you have. I try to open the YouTube and listen to that. And so that's why it takes me a while, and I don't just flip through them. And so with me being gone for a week and a half, I really got behind, and I've felt very frustrated in that I'm trying to get caught up. So I'm getting there. I will be shortly, I think. I'm working on task 2 now, so I'm feeling better about it. But I appreciate your being patient with me on that. All right, any other question?
Well, and I was just going to mention that it's not just Google Docs, because I tried to attach PDFs to mine, and Dr. Tillman couldn't open those. So, you would think that anybody could open a PDF, but apparently not. So,
well, and I ran into that with something that I tried to open today, and it would not let me open it. And so I think sometimes the best thing to do is just attach the document behind it. If it's a PowerPoint, it might be that you do the small slides and we can open it that way. So yeah, sometimes it's very hard to get everything to open, and most of the time a PDF does open, but for some reason I was having trouble opening something that I looked at today.
Well, when I switched all of mine over into Word documents, then Dr. Tillman was able to open them all.
Okay.
And so I was just going to, for my slideshow, that my presentation I did, I was just going to use the snipping tool and just copy each slide into a Word document so that it could be opened.
Dr. Tillman, I think, has got something she wants to say about that. Dr. Tillman, your video.
I'm muted, I'm sorry. You just save the document and save the PowerPoint and then go to the appendix and just open the PowerPoint and put it in the document, and we can open it.
Well, I
If
was
it's
afraid since you couldn't open the PDF, you might not be able to open a PowerPoint.
PDF is different. It's
Oh,
not.
okay.
It's not a Word. It's not in the Office.
If it's in Office, we can open it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if it's in Office, we got it. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
If it's in Office, we got it. We're usually.
we got it.
All right, one other quick thing, because I know this is lasting longer than most of you expect, but there were some questions about the Zoom conferences, and I've listed those again. I went over them earlier. And then I just reminded you again not to compare yourself to a previous group. I do want you to look with me about some information in your reading this week. It's at the very end. And it's talking about student achievement. And the thing that I want you to understand is, where did all this testing come from? Now, you all are probably very frustrated with the testing. Trust me, I was working when it started, and we got frustrated with it as it built. You know, it started out testing, and Dr. Tillman can probably remember just like I do. I think it started out as Senate Bill 2. And it started out testing 3, 5, and 8 in the elementary schools and certain classes in high schools. Well, I was at a meeting when the chairman of the state board said, this is our last chance to get it right. If we don't get it right, the public schools as we know it is going to change dramatically. And so shortly after the Senate Bill 2 came No Child Left Behind. Well, I think you're just now getting to some of the final stages of the No Child Left Behind, even though that legislation occurred in 2001. You all are dealing with that legislation, and that's where the testing is coming from. The purpose, and I've always found this to be very interesting, the way the data is used now. The purpose of all this testing was to make sure that if you were in Wilmington, or you were in Asheville, or you were in Winston-Salem, you were taught the exact same curriculum if you lived in North Carolina. And if you lived in South Carolina, you were taught the same curriculum regardless of what part of the state that you worked in. Now, that was the purpose that it was explained to us, this is the reason we're going to be getting into so much testing. Well, we were also told at that time that it would never be used to measure teachers. We know that that's not exactly what's happening anymore, but this is this is where I want you to really understand where legislation drives what you do in the classroom. And you are very frustrated, but it is not your principal, it is not your central office staff, it is not your superintendent. It is coming from people that you elected that is telling you what you need to be doing. And it doesn't matter whether they know what they're doing in your schools or not, but they're telling you what you need to be doing. Now, don't take me as being anti-political or anything like that, but I've always felt like that the legislation that is passed, and I actually told one of our legislators one time, I said, what you all pass, and after it goes through the attorneys and they say this is acceptable, that's not what you meant. And I really believe that. I really believe that the intention of the legislation was to make sure that all children learn. And we know they don't all learn in the same way. And we know that some, it takes a whole lot more time for them to learn than it does others. We know that we're expecting these poor little children that are coming here from other countries to learn the English language in less than 3 years. Well, that's absolutely absurd, but that's what we're having to do. So the intent is perfect. We want all children to learn. We want them to improve every year. We want them to be able to do certain standards when they graduate from high school. So I think we have to look at the intent, and then when it goes through so many different interpretations, look at the end result. And that's what you all are dealing with. And, and then one of the last things that I mean, No Child Left Behind has so many layers of things that you do before it gets to the last step. And the last step is to reorganize your school. And some of the schools have actually changed their name, and they've changed boundaries in order to try to keep the school open because they've not been able to make the growth that they need. This state of North Carolina has now given I think it's each one. I don't know that it's every school of education that's a state-supported university, but they've given state-supported universities that have a school of education and say, this one is yours. We're giving you the money. You take over and run this school and see if you can get some improvement, thinking that they will be able to make a difference. I know that Appalachian has one, UNCG has one, and there's probably almost every one of the parts of the major universities of the University of North Carolina has one of these schools assigned to them. And you know, it's one of those efforts trying to make sure we figure out what you're trying to figure out now. How do you get all of your children to learn? And what strategies can you use? And I have a feeling that once we get through this first year or two, we'll wind up with a lot of research coming out of these universities that might really help us, but it's going to take a while for that to happen. So look over the information I gave you about No Child Left Behind. So much of what public schools deal with is determined by the legislature at the state or federal level. I get frustrated when they start trying to change history because history has happened. And, you know, we just need to learn from history and not try to change history. And I don't think they've actually done that. But if you listen enough to some of the things, sometimes you hear them talking about how they're going to change the history books. And I'm thinking they're going to leave this section out and this section. I thought, they happened. They're ugly, but they happened. We study about them to keep them from happening again. And, you know, so that's why you want the history to deal with everything. So I want you just to look over that and just realize that a lot of what you're dealing with now, and as you get so frustrated with testing, don't take it out on your fellow teachers or your fellow principal or your fellow superintendent. They are just doing their jobs like you're trying to do yours. And then I gave you a little bit of information about research on teaching. So this chapter that you've been assigned this week plays right in with what you're working with, trying to get you strategies to help your children learn. All right, anything else for the good of the cause and that you have questions about or anything? Dr. Tillman, anything you would like to add? Oh, okay. All right. Angelique, do you have a question? And did I mispronounce your name?
No, you said it right. I was just pointing to her, Dr. Tillman, to let her know she was on mute.
Okay. All right. Yes, she's still on mute. All right. Andrea, did you have something? Okay. All right. Anybody else did we get all the chats answered?
So just to clarify, task 2 and 3 are due by Sunday.
We're going to be lenient with those. If you can get them done, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
And
hopefully I will have the draft of task 2 that was due last week. Hopefully I will have that finished by the end of tomorrow.
Okay.
Once they've been turned in. And so you'll have that information. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would be glad, as I said with task 1, I'm really looking forward to task 2s from anyone who's gotten them through the mill and you feel good about them, especially those people that I said, get on to task 2, task 1 looks great, okay?
And some of you are, well, all of you are doing good work. Some of you are doing exceptionally good work.
That's why I say we've got some doctoral candidates here. We just need to keep them lashed behind them, you know. That's right. Keep them moving.
Okay. Well, good luck for those of you who are still out of school. And, you know, if there's anything we can do to help you, you please let us know. We're here to be your support. And so I'm going to end the meeting, and y'all have a great rest of the week, okay?
And we're going to give Carla Pageant our prayers and hopes that she can get out of that tent soon.
Yes, that's right. That's
Yes.
absolutely right. So have a great week.